We can cross to Amber Alayyan from Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. She's the Deputy Programme Manager for Palestine. She's here in Paris at the moment. Amber, you have a team on the ground in Gaza. Were any working at the hospital? Are you hearing any updates from there?
There was one MSF surgeon who was working at the hospital at the time who we were in contact with, who told us that he was there at the time of the explosion and that he's a surgeon, so he was in the operating theater and that the roof caved in at the time. But fortunately, he's okay. But yes, the damage was quite extensive.
I mean, we're talking about like a triage of emergencies at the moment, a desperate humanitarian situation. Just give me the sense of how, you told me about the surgeon, how your teams are managing to work, how you're managing to stay in touch with them with the lack of energy, the fact you're trying to rely on generators to keep in touch, and the calls you're getting of how frantic it is.
The situation is desperate. It's really, for myself at least, unlike anything I've ever seen. We're in touch with them as often as we can. We try to streamline the calls because they are so limited on electricity and energy. So we have a specific team dedicated to ensuring that they're okay, to talking to them, to making contact with them. We have expatriate staff and Palestinian staff both in Gaza at the moment. There are some of the Palestinian staff who continue to work in the hospitals, whether in the OTs or in the we had some that were even working in the clinics last week for our post-operative care. But their main concern right now is for themselves and their families.
Just given the ripple effects of the hospital strike, and given you said you have a surgeon talking to you, the ceiling collapsing, they were hearing about other operations where the same thing was happening. You have Israel saying they have solid proof it was this jihadist group. You have Hamas, health authorities saying it was Israel. Is there a sense from eyewitnesses there, from the surgeon, from others, that they have an idea of what happened?
Well, the surgeon was operating at the time, so he wouldn't have. Our surgeon wouldn't have been able to know from where the blast came or from where the bomb came. So, and frankly, I don't know that anyone there could say that this is where it came from. The immediate reports that we heard was that it was an attack on the hospital, and the assumption was that it came from a result of the Israeli bombings, as they've been continuous over the last 10 days.
Now, you said you've never seen or dealt with anything like this before, and I've been on Médecins Sans Frontières deployments in Libya and other conflicts, so I know the gravity of the work you do. So that is saying something. Yeah. Has the modus operandi of your team had to change? I mean, what are they doing now? I guess people are coming to them desperate for medical help, for water, for food.
Yes. So our team is sort of scattered all over the place because, as I said, that they're fearing for their own families and their own lives, and there are some who have still managed to go into the hospitals where we've been working and continue to do surgeries. The hospitals, though, are sort of shifting their own supplies and sharing power, and so the teams follow, whichever hospital is capable of working, just based on whether or not it has electricity or water. The entire thing has been makeshift, really. This is what I mean by saying it's unprecedented. There's been no break from this, from the bombardment in 10 days. We can't get supplies in. We have no visibility on how we can get these supplies in. Compounded with the lack of electricity, lack of water, lack of food. For us, this is really all I can say is that it's unprecedented.
I wonder where your team was able to get food, water, and also how long they are likely to be able to operate in these conditions. How much longer do they say they can go on for?
Well, so like one of the hospitals where we're working is called Shifa Hospital. It's one of the Ministry of Health hospitals, and they are apparently out of electricity, which is, I think, why some of the surgeons have switched to, for example, the hospital that was bombed yesterday. We've also got operations. We do work in one of the hospitals in the south, which is still going. But I think really it's just sort of playing it by ear in the sense that wherever a hospital, if the hospital has electricity or water, then then we can continue to work there. But the supplies are dwindling. It's been very, very difficult. The prices of water and food are rising as well. It's very difficult to get access to safe places to eat, sleep, work. The population was told to move south, and then the south continued to be bombed. So there's really just nowhere safe.
Can I check with you? There's some Palestinians who were being treated in hospital said they're literally limited to maybe 300, 330 millilitres of water a day for the injured, none for those seeking shelter there. Is that something you're hearing too?
Yes, we've heard that. We heard that, especially over the weekend. It was really, really difficult, even for our national colleagues and for our expatriate colleagues, that we were really very limited and quite worried about them in terms of finding water supplies. Yes, and it's impossible to do surgery without water and electricity. And I also have to add, we have no more narcotics. So we were quite in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and with the various hospitals from the beginning in terms of turning over our supplies and working with them in their hospitals. We, as MSF, have no more narcotics to give. There are no more painkillers available, which makes it impossible for the 12,500 people who have been injured in need of surgical care.
That's
or any
really
kind of care.
Extraordinarily desperate situation you paint. Can I just ask, what are you going to do? You've got a surgeon in Gaza City. You mentioned it affected the hospital. What will your team do when the ground offensive comes?
We're really trying to urge that we can allow some kind of corridor where supplies can flow in. As I mentioned, it's really quite chaotic right now, and we're working on the plans for how we can respond to it if there's a ground offensive. It's all going to depend on the security of the hospitals and ensuring that the hospitals are still safe places to work.
Because they're supposed to be called deconflicted, aren't they? Which means they're not targeted, but that's clearly not what's happened in the past 12 hours.
No. And there were other hospitals that were maybe not targeted in the last few days over the last week, but who, ambulances were hit in front of hospitals. Entire parts of our own clinic were damaged just from the surrounding explosions. So there clearly seem to be no holds barred when it comes to deconflicted areas. That doesn't seem to exist anymore.
Amber, thank you for talking to us. Amber Alayyan from Médecins Sans Frontières on the teams on the ground in Gaza.